I actually had to down a big litre bottle of water before my medical, before I got weighed, to actually get to that proper weight. What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. If you're new around here, I'm Harry. I make military and fitness content. Currently training for the London Marathon whilst trying to maintain as much muscle mass as possible. So if you're interested, then follow along and you'll get obviously updates as to my marathon training, how I'm preserving my muscle, and also if you're on the military side of things, you'll get to see how I prepared for the military and how you can better prepare than how I did. In this video then, we're going to be covering 5 things that I did wrong in my preparation that I would change if I was to go and do it again. So without further ado, let's get straight into number 1 then. Number 1 is more resistance training. When I was going through my preparation, I pretty much did next to no resistance training. I did maybe one session every 2 weeks. Looking at what I know now and actually how to optimally train for the military, building a solid base of strength is unrivaled in terms of how you can be prepared for the rigours of military training. If I look at the bits that I struggled with when I was actually at Lympstone, I struggled with fireman's carries and I struggled with yomping. Both of those things require external load to me. Clearly in a fireman's carry, you're carrying someone and having to move. In a yomp, you're carrying a big heavy burden, having to move. My legs and my low back and my core just weren't strong enough and hadn't been under that load in a gym setting first to build that foundational strength for then to cross over and actually be functional in a recruit training environment. So should I have done it again? What I would do is build a good foundation, and the way to do that is to start with your main compound movements. Okay, so choose 2 lower body exercises, a couple of upper body exercises, do them in the gym with good form, okay, at a higher rep range with lower intensity, your intensity being the load. And then over time, you can start to cut back on the volume as the intensity or as the load increases. So you would maybe start with 4 sets of 10 at a very moderate weight, so you're learning the movement pattern, getting very used to the squat pattern or whatever you're doing, and then you would progress to 4 sets of 8, 4 sets of 6, 4 sets of 5, etc., over a course of weeks to then get stronger at that particular movement. I would also advise putting some single leg work in there, so whether it be Bulgarian split squats or lunges, walking lunges, that's clearly a really good carryover into Royal Marines training and recruit training for any military environment, because the majority of the things that we do are going to be on one leg, so it makes sense to train that way. Okay, number 2, nutrition. I had pretty much zero input into my own nutrition, had no idea what I was doing. I was just eating pretty much for pleasure and just to fill myself up when I got hungry. That meant that I was completely underweight for recruit training. When I went to Marine training, I think it's still the same. You had to be 65 kilos. Okay, I was 64, 63 when I was going through my prep. I actually had to down a big litre bottle of water before my medical, before I got weighed, to actually get to that proper weight. That's obviously not ideal. They put that minimum weight requirement for a reason, because there are times in training when you're going to be carrying loads up to your own body weight if you're only 65 kilos. Certainly if you're fireman's carrying, again, you'll be fireman's carrying people who are 20, 30 kilos heavier than you. So if you're a little bit heavier and a little bit more resilient, then you're going to stand yourself in better stead. So again, should I have done that again? I would be tracking my food. I'll put myself in a calorie surplus to make sure that I'm gaining weight, and I can measure that by obviously weighing myself. I would make sure I'm hitting enough protein, and I would just make sure that I'm getting most of my nutrients from whole foods sources. What I was doing was the complete opposite from that. I wasn't tracking anything because there was nothing to track stuff on. MyFitnessPal wasn't around, or certainly wasn't as popular as it is now. I wasn't weighing myself at a regular basis. I certainly wasn't getting 80-90% of my nutrition from whole foods. So in short, I was shooting myself in the foot, and that has a fallout with your training as well. So clearly I was very fit when I went to recruit training, but if I'd have bolstered my training with good nutrition, then there's probably a good chance I would have been in an even better state going down to Lympstone for that initial period. Okay, number 3 is more zone 2 work. So if you don't know what zone 2 work is, zone 2 refers to a heart rate zone, which is your aerobic heart rate zone. So 60 to 70% of your max heart rate. You can either use the 220 minus your age to get your max heart rate and then pull 60 to 70% from that. Or you can use a simpler formula where you just choose 180 minus your age, and that gives you your maximum aerobic threshold. So for me, I am 25 years old, so 180 minus 25, 155. That means 155 beats per minute is my maximum aerobic threshold. I had no idea about this when I was going through recruit training and going through my preparation. And so every run I did would be balls to the wall, as hard as I can, with no holds barred. I would have no time or no impetus to do slow, steady state cardio, because I thought, what's the point? If I'm not sweating, if I'm not breathing hard, then I'm not making progress. We know now, or I know now, that building your aerobic base is one, going to make you a better runner overall and better at that specific discipline you're doing it in, whether it be running, swimming, rowing, whatever it is. You still need a good, solid aerobic base. What it also does is make you a little bit less breakable. So training obviously is an 8-month or 9-month now period. It's a long period to sustain a good level of physical fitness and not getting injured and performing day in, day out. So if you've got a solid aerobic base and you can tap into that aerobic system for longer, in terms of if you take an individual session and you've maybe got a 6-mile speed march, if you've got a shit aerobic base, you might get a mile into that and be straight into the anaerobic threshold kind of area, and therefore your body's working harder, more chance of injury, more chance of fatiguing, more chance of failing that test. If you pull back and maybe 6 months beforehand you've started building your aerobic base and you've got a better aerobic threshold, then you might get to mile 4, mile 4.5, mile 5 before you even have to tap into those anaerobic stores and those threshold stores. So it just makes you a lot more efficient in a given activity, and therefore if we're more efficient, we're going to be less prone to injury and we're going to be more resilient across the course of an 8-9 month course. Okay, linking into injury then, number 4 is prehab work. Again, something I had no idea about or no time for when I was prepping for the military. So prehab work just refers to anything that you're doing in the gym or outside of the gym that specifically stops or prevents an injury. So it might look like tibialis anterior raises to protect you from shin splints, okay, making your shin, the muscle on the front of the shin, stronger, more resilient, so it can handle more load, and therefore the overuse injury that is shin splints doesn't become as prevalent as we go through building mileage on the legs, going through running in boots, okay, running with weight on. All of these things put obviously stress and stimuli through the legs and through the lower limbs specifically. And so if the muscles around that shin are a little bit stronger, then we're going to put ourselves in better stead to protect ourselves from those injuries. Another one, for example, is shoulders. Okay, the shoulders is super complex joint, but the main way we can protect against injury around the shoulder, we're obviously going to be doing loads and loads of push-ups, loads and loads of pull-ups throughout training, loads and loads of rope climbs. The shoulders are going to go through a hell of a lot. So the main thing we can do is make it stable. And the way we do that, again, is strengthening these little tiny muscles around the shoulder, the rotator cuff, the supraspinatus, all of these things that hold the shoulder in the right position. We're going to look to strengthen those through a number of exercises, be it the Y raise, the banded pull apart, the scapular pull up, all of these sort of exercises that you wouldn't necessarily do in a normal gym setting because they're not the sexiest movements. They're not going to get you a big chest, they're not going to get you massive lats. But what they are doing is strengthening these little forgotten muscles to make sure that we're resistant to those injuries. Okay, last one then, last but not least, variety. I started training for the Marines probably 3 years before I started actual recruit training. I was doing the same things pretty much week in, week out. So I was doing push-ups, pull-ups, sit-ups, running. That would be it for the whole time. So for 3 years, I was pretty much trying to progress in the exact same movements with no variance, no accessory movements on those things. I would even do the same workout every single Wednesday for a year, 2 years. I did Murph, so 100 mile run, 100 pull-ups, 200 push-ups, 300 squats, a mile run. I'd do that every single week with zero progression, not moving forward in any way, shape or form, but zero progression every week just because I thought it's hard, it's got all the movements in that I need to be good at, so let's just do it every week. I know now, again, that's probably not ideal because you need to be moving forward in some way, shape or form. You need to either add weight, you need to go faster, you need to change up something, whether it be adding a deficit into the push-ups, whether it be adding a goblet into the squats, whatever it is, extending the run, decreasing the run, things that have to change. And even with the push-ups and the pull-ups and the sit-ups I was doing outside of that, I would do the same kinds of things. So we need variance. The body is good at accommodating stress, and so what you're doing when you're training is you're putting stress on the body. If you consistently give the body the same stress to adapt to, it's going to accommodate it, and it's just not going to adapt. So after a certain point, that's why we plateau. So after a certain point, we need to change that stimulus, and we need to keep changing things up every sort of 8, 10, 12 weeks to keep things fresh and to keep your body adapting to those bits of exercise that we're throwing at it. If we don't do that, then we risk, obviously, overuse injuries because we're doing the same things over and over and over again. So we get compensatory issues with that. We also get imbalances because if we're doing tons and tons of horizontal pressing with press-ups and zero horizontal pulling with like something like an inverted row or a chest-supported row, then we're going to be imbalanced in the shoulder joint, imbalanced in the back, the mid-back department. Okay, so these things are going to flare up after a certain amount of time. So we need to be varying things up. That's it then. So I'll just recap. I'll go from the top. Okay, more resistance training was number one. Clearly I didn't do any of it. Nutrition, so dialing in that nutrition, whether it be you want to lose weight, you want to gain weight, you want to maintain weight. There are things you can do around your nutrition to optimize these things, and it's going to carry into your training, making that more effective, more efficient. Zone 2 work, so that's 60 to 70% of your aerobic threshold, your max heart rate, 60 to 70% running loads and loads of miles, building that aerobic base. Prehab work, so specific movements that prevent specific injuries around joints, muscles, whatever it is. And variety, okay, last one. That's it then. Hope you enjoyed that video. Hope you found it useful. If you did, drop it a comment and a like in the boxes below. Hopefully, if you're going through these processes and going through the military selection process, or even if you're looking to join and maybe you're a bit younger, you can look at what I did wrong and not make those same mistakes. If you want me to help you with that, I absolutely can. Okay, the top link in the description is going to be my academy. You can go and join that for a 7-day free trial. And that's going to show you everything that I now recommend with all of my experience and all of my knowledge around the subject for you to do to prepare optimally for the military. I didn't do that, so don't be like me. Other than that then, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.